Always difficult to follow an introduction, but delighted to be here. Really pleased. So Angie started to talk to you a bit about the national changes that are happening, and it is those changes that we're working. So Sarah's here today from the ICB, from the Integrated Care Board. It's been really, really, really important that health are represented in the room. So really pleased you're here. It's part of that partnership that Angie described. Some of the challenges that Hertfordshire are facing are national challenges. So when Angie talked to you about the rise in education, healthcare and needs assessments, when we look at places for children in special schools, when we look at waiting lists for speech and language therapy or access to neurodevelopmental pathways, they are all national issues. And so what's happening nationally? And then we'll look at what's happening in Hertfordshire. So nationally, the government has been working since this administration came into power to look at how to change SEND. So some of it has been about how to change a national dialogue. I find it really uncomfortable and unhelpful when people continually talk about a system that's broken, because actually children and families live their lives in that system, and lots of those children and families have good outcomes every day, and lots of professionals work on a dedicated basis. I was saying to Donna from St Crisis earlier, and your colleague whose name I did not get, I'm very sorry, Mary. So I was talking to Donna and Mary earlier as parents here about a national dialogue at the moment that feels very, very angry. So today is not only National Inclusion Week, today is the SEND Day, the rally in Parliament of parents of children with special educational needs, who believe that the system is letting them down, and rightly believe that the system is letting them down. So nationally, we are looking at how to create a better system. What is the best way of getting the right support to children at the right time? Why have I spent 40 years working with parents listening to the language of the battlefield? You know, most parents I work with don't want to fight. They just want to be parents, to get on with their lives, to bring their children up, to have the same outcomes for their children that we want for our children, that all of us want. And so what we're trying to do at the moment, in what is a fairly heated, noisy place, Parliament, you might have noticed last week it was not a quiet week in Parliament. You know, we're getting to know new ministers and new systems and whatever. What is it at the heart of all of that? If we ignore the noise, how is it we find a system where children get the earliest support? But we look at what happens in early years, when you as a parent, you first feel that maybe your child is different, needs some support. How do we do that? How do we get children ready for schools? How do we work out what the best schools are? In an ideal world, all children would go to their local school with their brothers and sisters, and that school would meet their needs. That's not where we are now, but there are parts of this. So how do we make the most inclusive schools in Hertfordshire the standard for everyone? And for those children who will not thrive in those environments, and there are some children who do, what do really excellent special schools look like? So that actually you have ambition for your children for their adult life. And what do we do about the partnerships with other people? Crucially, the partnership with health, but also the partnership with our social care colleagues. What is it we do nationally to bring that together? None of that is straightforward. None of that is yet fixed. Currently, we're in a position where government cannot respond openly to what's happening. But for those of you who follow the joys of social media, please believe me that at least 75% of what is written is inaccurate. It is not what's happening. It is not where we're going. What will happen within the next few weeks, and this is government, so timelines are always challenging. Parliament breaks up tomorrow again and goes off on its round of party conferences, comes back again in the middle of October. What will happen between now and Christmas? Remember, a civil service autumn ends on Christmas Eve, right? So what will happen between now and Christmas, and hopefully much before you've put your decorations up, will be the publication of a white paper for schools. But within that, because it's about all schools, government's not just interested in those children who have a label of SEND, it's interested in all those children for whom education is not working. So one of the really interesting things about Hertfordshire, and for me, working in Hertfordshire has been a joy. And it's been absolutely fascinating because all of the lessons I take when I work with all of you, I also take back into government. So one of the things we've been looking at with concern here is the rising number of children wanting education at all. Yeah? So what's happening to them? Why have we got groups of children now who are just not engaging with school? What happens to them? Do we know if they're safe? Do we know if they're being educated properly? Do we know if their outcomes are met? You know, one of the things we do know is the crossover between those children who are not in school and those children who have special educational needs is high. So what is it we're looking at? So it's those broader things. How do we get a system that looks at all children? So what we want to come out of this is what's called a white paper. For those of you who are not used to the joys of legalism, a white paper is a paper of intent. It says the government intends to do these things, but it intends to do it after consulting with you. So the law says that when the white paper comes out, there is a 12-week period of full consultation and engagement. And we would expect everyone to be part of that and everyone to look at the things within it that matter to them. Once that comes back in, the government has to look at how people have responded. It then has to decide how it wants to go forward. And the likelihood at this stage, but this is politics, it moves, is that the government will go for legislative change in this area. And the reason for that is the system currently is too complicated. It's too challenging for people to work through, and it doesn't have accountability in the right place. So at the heart of where we are now is not a shared partnership, it's an uneven partnership, where families are defeated by a system that is complicated, and where often a recourse to law is what comes out of it. So if you're a parent now who decides to appeal against the system and go to the tribunal, for example, if you registered with the tribunal today, you'd have about 15 months wait before you came in. You'd have that level of uncertainty, that level of anger. We have to not do that. We have to be able to resolve things at the earliest point for people. So one of the big pieces of work we're doing is accountability and redress. Who holds who to account? That's really important, as Angie describes, a changing system. You know, as Hertfordshire has to look at local government reform, as Sarah's ICB goes from, 1.5 local authorities to 3, 4, whatever it is. So five, there you go. 1 million to 3.2 million, I think, people. So in the middle of all of that, where's the line? Where's the accountability? So that's going to be really, really important. The other thing that is coming out in the autumn, we think, because government's just reshuffled, is also a similar process, but for post-16s. So one of the goals of really good children's services, there are 2 goals for really good children's services. One is to give children the very best childhood they can have, whatever that is. The second is to help them become the adults that they need to be. So you talked earlier, Mary, about transition services, yeah? So trying to work out that. So one of the things we're trying to look at the moment, if you've got a schools white paper, school sort of starts about 5, sort of ends about 16, 18. What happens after that? So the government's also committed to bringing out a skills white paper coming out that starts to look at how do we provide young people with the very best opportunities for adult life. So change is with us. Now, I don't want you to go away and worry about government policy, because at the moment there's very little you can do about it, until that consultation process comes in. But it's important for the improvement partnership to worry about government policy, because as Angie said, the heart of it is to say, whatever the noise and the chaos and the change around our heads are, how do we hold a partnership together that just continues to deliver? So when I got a call 2 years ago or so from Joe, I was delighted to come to Hertfordshire, partly because no one expected Hertfordshire to fail. As a local authority area, Hertfordshire has a long, good reputation in terms of delivering for its communities. It is an outstanding area in relation to delivering for children who need social care, who are looked after by the system. And there's a big crossover between children who need support and social care and children who have special educational needs. So how can an area be outstanding for its children's services, and we just have systemic failure in SEND. So coming into it to understand that, it's really important. So what I did was I wandered about the place. I'm very good at wandering about the place. And I went to talk to people, and I talked to parent carers, and I talked to schools, and I talked to different bits of the authority, and I talked to health and said, why isn't it working then? What's gone wrong? What's not working? And what wasn't working was because Hertfordshire is such a big county, 650 schools or so. Looking at Tony, he knows these things. 650 schools, a massive county, some very different places in the county. You go and talk to people who live in Watford, talk to people who live in St Albans, very different county. So within the county, there was patches of some really good stuff. And there's patches of some, but when you said to somebody, well, how do you know here what's happening there? It was really hard to find out. So it goes back to actually the start of the building of Auntie's vision. What is one Hertfordshire? What does one Hertfordshire look like? And I remember thinking at the time, one of the biggest challenges we had was that parents were telling us as the easy way to get the attention of the county was to complain about it. So we started there, and I started thinking, if I was a parent coming in and I was looking up into Hertfordshire, how would I find my way through it? How would I find my way to the right people at the right time and whatever? How would I make sure the right people were talking together? So what we started to do was to build a board so that the right people could talk to people at the right time. So you'll hear again and again today, you've already heard it in every speech so far, the importance of partnership. Yeah? And the importance of understanding what that partnership was for. Because when you've been inspected and you've got this notice over your head, you also get an improvement notice from the Secretary of State, who basically says you're not good enough, sort yourself out. That can be really powerful. How can we sort ourselves out? How can we meet an inspection process? But far, far, far more important than the inspection process was something that said, how do we meet the needs of children and families? Because in the middle of this, we are clearly not delivering everything for everyone. And if along the way we get that right, then that's going to be important. Some of what we've had to do was some learning on why you can be outstanding in one area and not the other. What was the difference? And part of that is David here, David Butcher. I thought I saw him this morning. There you are. The reason I'm pointing out the wonderful David's out the back was because one of the things we needed to find out was where the children were. Who are our children? How many children we've got? Where do they live? What are their needs? What waiting lists are they sat on? What schools are they in? And whatever. It sounds easy, but it wasn't, because it's about building a partnership database. We bounced on people like Sarah's Head regularly and said, tell us about waiting lists. Tell us where these children fit. They live in this part of Hertfordshire, what happens to them? Do we know these are the right children in the right time? Do we know that? And what's really interesting now some of you who are members will have seen this regularly lately, is that we know that now. We know what we're doing. That's why we know our stats have gone up. We know how many children we've got. We know where they are. We know what's happened. That's why we uncovered so many children missing from education. So we're beginning to know the detail of who we are, because that was one of the criticisms. What we also learned from social care was the importance of quality. Sounds mad, doesn't it? But the processes that government had designed for us are not helpful. Design an EHC plan, an education, health and care plan in 20 weeks. We could do that. Could be a load of rubbish. As a parent, you could read it and think that's not my child. As a school, you could think, well, that's lovely, but it's totally undeliverable. So actually going back to quality, building the SEND Academy, wherever Hero is, bringing people in who understood how these affect the real lives of the people involved. So it's something about going back to basic. And it was something about making sure that we understood each other's limitations. So Angie started to talk to you about the council's limitations. There is not, Steve, I do not think, an endless budget. It would be nice. But when you get to a choice between SEND and potholes, it's an interesting political decision. There is not an endless budget in a council, but also our colleagues in health. We've had some fiery meetings. trying to work out what is possible. How much money can we put in? How far can we get it? And most importantly, if we put that money in, can we make sure it's the right money in the right place to make a difference? And that's been key. So you see the leaflets you got this morning about the local offer, about the stands. This was about trying to make sure people know. So working out the art of the possible has been really, really important. How can we demonstrate that in Hertfordshire we have done the very best that we can? Some of that has also been about delivering those proactive things. Mark gave you a list earlier of the things we've been able to achieve. They're part of a long list. But I was really, really pleased, Mark, when you came in and did the listening exercises over the summer. Because listening's also been part of it. I know, Donna, that you're telling me this morning, rightly, there are families who have not felt this change yet. And there will always be families who don't feel the change. And there is something about how far do we get with that, yeah? It is unlikely that the council and its partners will ever get to a place where everyone's happy. But it should be possible to get to a place where everyone knows what is on offer, where people are listened to and respected and understood. So that is the process we engage in. So for those of you who have not felt the change, I am so pleased you are here today, because that should be part of that process. It's really hard for local areas to communicate success, partly because Joe, who is our wonderful DCS, is sat in front of me. And the conversations about how can we say we've done really, really well when families are going to say yes, but not well for me. How do we start to change a dynamic where it feels like everything is stuck into something that actually shows movement? Not to be trite about it, not to say, oh, isn't it lovely now, it's all fixed, but to be able to show people where it's possible to get things better. It feels really, really important to me that we leave people with a belief, not that the system is broken, but that the system is capable of getting better. The system is capable of delivering, and that life for your children in Hertfordshire should get better. So, where are we now? 2 years in. I think there is a much, much stronger partnership. It's been really important that we also have strong leadership from Angie and from the ICB. There are people I can go and talk to and say, I don't think this bit is working as well as it should. It's been really important that the parent care reform have stuck with it all the way through. And as Angie said, they are constructive, they are collaborative, and they're not worried, they're not afraid of challenging. And that's been really important. I think the processes, the system for delivery are in a good place. We wait now for our monitoring inspection. The monitoring inspection is by the inspectorates, by Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission, who have come to see if we've got along the journey in as far as we can. National challenges mean those things have been delayed, and so we are waiting for what happens next. But that process is about measuring us against, are we doing the very best we can for families? Are we able to tell people that? Are we telling frontline professionals what's happening? For all of those of you who work directly with families, whether you work in schools or in social care or in health, do you know the change taking place? So communications is a big thing for us. And it's one of the things that I bang on Sam's head about regularly. So she's very used to it. I'm really pleased to have our local democracy reporter here, somewhere in the audience as well, I think, today. So that's good. So the next stage is what Angie described. That building that vision to the next stage. As we get into monitoring, and we get through that, we will. Hertfordshire will have a judgment of effective action. I don't doubt that. Effective action doesn't mean it's all finished. It means that the trajectory for change is going in the right place. It means we're doing what we can, but we continue to identify the areas for improvement. As that happens, I will walk away from Hertfordshire. And I will walk away because I will have complete confidence in the leadership and partnership team that they will take you onto the next stage of that journey. And as we work through changes in the national picture, and we try and understand how we're delivering the best and are we delivering the best, one of my reference points will be Hertfordshire. And I'll be coming back and saying, does it work for you? Have we got this right? Is it going to make a difference to those families who feel at the moment the system's letting them down? So it's been an absolute pleasure for me working with you for the last 2 years. I hope you have a really good day today, and I'm around till lunchtime if any of you want to catch me and have a chat. Thank you very much.